you went under the wheels.
Perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we're going to put out our least listened to episode of all time. Because we're talking about Tick, Tick, Boom and the Power of the Dog.
Well, these are both like featured movies on Netflix, so you would think there would... If the old guard is any indication, this might be our most popular episode yet.
That would be nice.
Somehow.
That would be nice.
I still don't understand how the old guard does such better numbers and everything else.
People just like watching Charlize Theron kick butt and hate listening to people be critical of it, I guess. I don't know.
No, they like listening to people be critical of it.
Oh, I guess they do. I guess they do. We didn't get that odd, like on our when we first posted it on our other channel, which I should probably just shut down. But there's like a really weird like internet English comment where it's just like this guy who's trying to say something and I don't quite understand what they're trying to say, but it's like telling us that we're dumb because of things and reasons that I can't quite comprehend because it's not a comprehensible comment.
Yeah, it's just like this blast of words, and I'm just sitting there thinking like he's trying to say something. I just know it.
Should have gone with draft number 2. Let's rewrite this thing. But yeah,
this podcast is sponsored by Grammarly.
Watch as it doesn't actually catch all of your grammar errors.
When you're trying to leave shitty, incoherent, critical comments on people's YouTube videos, make them understandable with Grammarly.
I know that like students use Grammarly and it doesn't catch all of their grammar errors, and so then like if you have to teach people grammar, you realize like one, English grammar has a lot of rules that kind of make sense but also really suck, and two, people just disregard those rules half the time. It's gotten worse on the internet, but you know, it goes to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because like we have what is it? It's not autocorrect, but like the correct function in most word processors.
Yeah.
Spell check, and then now Grammarly on top of that. It's like more and more tools to like make people functionally illiterate. Because like I remember when I was in college, there were like a lot of foreign students where we went to school, and like whenever I was in groups with them, I would read their writing, and it was all like impeccable. Like they had just razor sharp like grammar, syntax, vocabulary, and then like kids from the United States would write like barely coherent, incomprehensible gobbledygook, and it's like, what? This is your language. How do you not know how to write in it? And how are you in college when this is the quality of your writing? But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the other weird thing is how we speak is different than how we're supposed to write in an academic sense, which makes sense. Like you don't want everyone to sound like an abstract, but
good Lord, no. Have you ever like?
Yeah, I've tried reading a couple.
Like
I remember
if you've ever read the first few if you've ever tried to read like a scientific paper. Yeah. The first few sentences all just sound like gibberish, and then you just give up.
They're like, read the abstract to summarize. You get one line in, and you're just like, no, I can't do this. This too
abstract
much.
Is an abstraction of the English language.
You really put the abstract in abstract. You know what I mean? No, that's what the... Okay, all right. Well, anyway, moving on.
This county is making me miserable.
So let's talk about Tick, Tick, Boom. So, Tick, Tick, Boom. What brought you to Tick, Tick, Boom? I know what brought me to Tick, Tick, Boom, but what brought you to Tick, Tick, Boom?
I was recommended it very, very vehemently over the past like 2 months by my mom.
Really?
Yeah, she was like, you should see Tick, Tick, Boom. And I'm like, okay. And then like a week later, it's like, have you seen it yet? It's like, no. Have you seen? And then a week later, have you seen it yet? No. And then repeat for like 8 weeks, and then it's like, okay, let me see it.
So here's what it does not have going for it for you, is my guess. It's a musical.
Yep.
Here's what it does have going for it. It stars Andrew Garfield. I don't know how you feel about Andrew Garfield, but he's been kind of pretty solid over the last.
I love Andrew Garfield, even though he's gone from being like the cool guy in movies to being like a weird derp in everything now. I still love the guy. He's great.
He is. He's Under the Silver Lake.
Yeah.
Still awesome. That's what kind of brought me back around to him. But like, because I really liked him in The Social Network, and then I was so ho-hum on those Amazing Spider-Man movies. But Under the Silver Lake kind of brought me back. The other thing it has going for it, I think, at least for me, is the fact that it's all about the creative process and the writing process. So
that's also a cool aspect of it.
What rating do you give Tick Tick Boom?
I'd say it's like a solid, maybe even a high witness.
Wow. I think it's a high fine, and at
really?
most a low witness. Yeah. I enjoy it. It's not for everyone. I really don't like Jonathan Larson's music. I really don't like it.
That's understandable. Some of those songs are really annoying. Yeah.
It's
weird because like there's some songs where it's like, okay, this makes sense in the context of what's happening, and there's other songs where it just sounds like this sounds like he just needed a song here, and it's like, why is he singing about brunch? And it's just like, you know what I mean? Because he has this really there's this blowout musical number about brunch, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Which is like, that was my favorite musical number, just because it was so over the top, and also had all of those, like, that was like the Lin-Manuel Miranda Cinematic Universe crossover event of the season.
Yeah, but like, no, it's enjoyable for the Lin-Manuel Miranda Cinematic crossover universe thing, and all of the special effects they use to like transform the diner that the song takes place in. All that stuff is great. The song itself is competent, but it's like, why is this a song? Why is this here? Why do I need to know about like the rush brunch hour at this diner?
I don't care about brunch at the Starlight I don't know. Again, I think that's like my honest. I agree with you. Like, why is this here? So I guess let's kind of go through the movie a bit. It's it's based off of a semi-autobiographical one-man show that turned into like a 2 or 3-man show. I don't really know the history of the show that much, but it's by Jonathan Larson, who also wrote Rent, which, Gabe, I know is your favorite musical of all time.
Yes, Rent, a musical I have definitely heard of.
That's the one where everyone pays their rent on time, right?
I
right?
think so.
It's the one where they released the movie directed by Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone director Chris Columbus, who then decided to cast all of the people who are 40 as like 20-year-olds, and then was just like, yeah, pretend like they're not.
Well, that's a lot of stuff. Just pretend he's not a million years old.
It's like you're looking at the cast and you're like, all of these people can afford rent. I know they all can, but I'll just ignore it. It's fine. So he did like, so I guess in the show he's trying to get a show staged in front of a bunch of people so that he can get people to buy his show and he can make it. He's basically
trying to get a preview of this musical that he's been writing for 8 years, in the hopes that the producers who attend the preview will want to buy it.
And in the process, he's gone to a couple of workshops, and they're like, okay, well, all of these things decide to conspire to give him a hard time. He needs to write a brand new song, which he's never had a problem writing a song before, but now he's having a problem. His girlfriend wants to move to a different like spot. His best friend has just left the apartment that they were living in, and Jonathan can't afford rent. AIDS.
Just generally.
Just generally. What else is going on in it?
He's turning 30 and he's having like a midlife crisis.
Has that happened to you yet?
Yes, even though I'm still like far enough away from. I'm closer to like my early 20s than I am to 30 still, but.
Oh, I guess you are, aren't you?
Yeah. But okay, I'm getting there.
Like that definitely happened to me where I was like, well, what is. So we can kind of go into that, but yeah, he's about to turn 30, and then what happens in the show?
Well, that's kind of it. I mean, that's the whole thing. He's in the middle of a big crisis in his life. He's like, the musical, my life as an artist is not where I want it to be, and I'm sad. I'm turning 30. I should have made it by now. I'm not gay, but every gay person I know is dying of AIDS, somehow. And my girlfriend wants to move to another place, and the camera lingers a really long time on Vanessa Hudgens, even though she's not really a character in this movie.
Yeah.
And
that was like the weird thing to me was like, oh, Vanessa Hudgens is in this. Oh, it looks like she's gonna have a significant role. Oh no, she doesn't. She's just
there. Well, it's weird because, like, I think in the original version of the stage version of this, her character is like a much bigger part of the story, and then in this, it's basically a glorified cameo.
Yeah.
But they keep being like, "Hey, look, guys, it's Vanessa Hudgens. You know who that is? That's a person you know. Look who it is." And it's like, but she doesn't do anything. She just stands around in the background.
Former Disney Channel alum and now like star of Netflix Christmas movies, star Vanessa Hudgens.
It's like
she's still
relevant.
relevant.
If in a Marvel movie Stan Lee shows up and the camera just doesn't leave him for the rest of the movie,
and he just keeps showing up like sporadically throughout the movie. Like he's just drinking tea or something, and then it just like cuts to him randomly and
like every time he shows
scenes.
up too, the camera stays on him for a weirdly long time.
Yeah, it's her inclusion in it. Like, I don't know what was going on there, but they were like, look, we paid for Vanessa Hudgens. We're going to get our money's worth. Keep that damn camera on her. And in the editing room, it says, no, don't cut away. Don't cut away. Show her. We need proof that she was there shooting. So I don't know if it had to do with COVID restrictions either. Like, maybe she was supposed to be more significant in the movie, but because of like COVID, they couldn't bring her in because it shot before COVID, and then there was that huge middle section where all shooting was shut down, and then they came back and finished it. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. So my thing is like, and I think the movie is like aware of this, I find the character John really annoying. Like it's not it so Jonathan Larson wrote it, and Jonathan Larson, it was like a week before Rent was supposed to like open on Broadway, he died. So it's kind of sounds bad to talk badly about him. And I'm not talking badly about him. I'm talking badly about the main character in Tick, Tick, Boom, John, who is not a one-to-one composite of Jonathan Larson. But I think the movie, like one of the things is the movie is very critical of the fact that like John is having this crisis, this midlife crisis, and everything he thinks about is all about him. When by the end of the movie, all of the characters are like, "Look around you, dude. Like, get your head out of your ass. This isn't about you."
Well, and that's kind of, I think, one of the things I appreciate is that the movie is not totally uncritical of how like self-absorbed he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's constantly freaking out about his own life. Meanwhile, like his best friend has AIDS or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, they're like the world's bigger than you, pal. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. And then the even like the last musical number of the movie is about that, like the world being bigger than him.
Which I think is good.
Yeah, so I thought that was fine. His character is obnoxious, but like he's the obnoxious character who learns not to be as obnoxious. But it's also like it's a musical. Everyone in a musical is always obnoxious because they're like emotions are at like 120% all the time, where they're bouncing off the walls. You know, it's just how it is.
I'm trying to think of like something else that I've watched where it's just like
I've never seen an understated musical in my entire life.
it's like a Michael Bay movie where everyone is just like at the extremes the whole movie.
Everyone is Anthony Anderson's character in a Michael Bay movie. I don't even know if Anthony Anderson has ever been in a Michael Bay movie.
He's
can
in the original
feel it.
Transformers.
I feel like he has been.
He's in the original Transformers.
Okay.
Yeah, and he like ate the whole plate and throws it down. And he's like, I ate the whole plate. You know.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm right. Everyone in this movie and everyone in every musical is Anthony Anderson's character in a Michael Bay movie. There you go.
Yeah. I just got me thinking about the first Transformers movie, and like Megan Fox obviously was like the standout pretty girl, but then I think like Teresa Palmer or something. There was another actress there who was like a character who was a scientist. She doesn't appear in any other Transformers movie after that. I think I've seen Transformers 1 like once, and I just was like, I'm not feeling it. Anyway,
I have not seen Transformers 1.
Oh.
But I have seen Transformers 2 more than once, and good God, it is so bad.
So bad. I saw Transformers 2 more than once in theaters.
Oh.
It's like I can't rub that away from my gray matter. It's just stuck there. It's just I am under the enemy's scrotum is just like dangling around in my head all the time. It's very unfortunate.
I like how you read John Turturro's lines in like a quasi Optimus Prime voice.
I am under the enemy's scrotum.
Autobots, I am under the enemy's scrotum.
That movie sucks because anyway, no, I don't want to talk about Transformers.
It's 3 fucking hours.
Well, yeah, that too.
Of shit.
That too. Yeah. Like the only good thing about those movies was Optimus Prime, and they were just like, no, we can't do anything with Optimus Prime. Let's just keep killing him off. And Peter Cull's just like, oh, but I'm not getting that Eeyore money anymore. And so anyway, because he was the voice of Eeyore, I think, and yeah, we talked about that before. So. Tell me some of the stuff you really liked about or some of the stuff that really worked for Tick, Tick, Boom.
I thought for the most part the direction worked pretty well. I thought that
I would agree with
what
that.
Is a one-man show, which is the cringiest iteration of a cringy art form.
That's so mean. That's so mean.
It's true. You can't deny it. Musical theater is cringe, and its cringiest version is the one-man show.
No, I like theater. I think it's one of the few places where like you can truly transport yourself with the minimum use of anything. Like more than any. Except for maybe reading. So because like when you're in the theater space and you're with them in real time and you're like they could mess up at any time, I hope they don't, and there's like nothing really on stage except like the smallest indication, I think there is something magical that can happen. I know we're gonna disagree on this.
You're wrong, but whatever. I
think it has its merits, and I think one of the merits of theater is to not adapt every theater thing into a movie.
So they did a great job of adapting a one-man show into a movie, I thought.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, it obviously the one-man show is going to have a lot of context taken out and just delivered through monologue. But they did a good job of like creating that context around what was going on and kind of giving you like a hybrid of like, this is the show as it was done originally, like this is Tick Tick Boom, and then this is the movie of Tick Tick Boom that was actually like kind of, that's like
More realistic.
This is what's happening in the world of the play that you wouldn't get to see until now.
Right.
And I liked how, I mean, it is like hyper energetic to a fault, but that works most of the time because I mean it is again a musical and everyone's just bouncing off the walls with energy all the time. But they do a good job, I think, of translating everything into a non-stage context. They do a good job of then, like, in the musical numbers, almost reintroducing stagey elements in a way that's, like, fitting with a movie. Like, again, like the diner that unfolds like a dollhouse. Like, that all that was really cool and well done. And, was it absolutely necessary? No, but it does a good job of bringing to life, like, the content of the play and of the songs and stuff. So, I mean, I thought it was really good. Like, Lin-Manuel Miranda, if someone told me, oh, he's directing a movie, I would have thought, oh, good Lord, no.
Right.
But I was impressed. He did a great job.
Yeah, he's I think he does a really good job. He's really smart about certain things. I think one of the most interesting things, and obviously Lin-Manuel Miranda is like very aware of all of these different narrative techniques he can use because he's made the jump pretty easily. Like he did multiple musicals, so he knows how to structure the musical part of it. But then I think the one part I remember is there's one moment in the movie where the narration is doing something different than what is happening in the real world. What he's talking about on stage is doing something that's different than in the real world. And so he has that, the sort of like the unreliable narrator stuff, which if I remember correctly, I think you cringe at unreliable narrator stuff.
No, I'm
okay.
fine with unreliable narrators.
Okay. So I like how that was done in the musical. Like I said, I don't like the songs. I don't like his style of music, but
No,
that's not something that Lin-Manuel Miranda has control over.
Yeah, no,
although obviously he's a fan.
Yeah, I mean, there's a scene in the movie that I think is like a perfect encapsulation of that dichotomy where John and his girlfriend have this big fight. And the fight is also a song in the monologue, but like the fight that's the song in the monologue is like an unreliable representation of the fight in the movie. So it's this really cool cinematic juxtaposition where the song is super abstracted, and then the fight in the kind of movie world feels very real.
And also
the song is horrible. It's so
That's what
annoying.
I was gonna say.
It's so fucking bad. I wanted to pierce my ears out, like just stick a fucking hot knife into my eardrum. So it's like all of these things that we've been talking about, I think they coalesce so perfectly in that scene where it's like some really interesting like filmmaking here. There's like really interesting juxtaposition of John as an unreliable narrator or trying to like kind of wash over a particular moment, contrasting the moment and then a song that's about the moment. And then, but the song is so bad.
Well, but that's
so obnoxious.
So like, I think that's part of the brilliance of that moment is like the song is so obnoxious and hard to listen to and such a pain. And then it's accurately reflected in sort of like the frustration of the audience with the frustration of the stupid fight that they're having. And it's like, well, if you have lemons, you might as well make lemonade. That's a lemonade moment to me. Because it's like, if you have to play that song straight where they're acting like these like obnoxious looking dolls and the song itself is like really grating, at least do something interesting with film language to make it come out and be like, okay, I do have to suffer through this part, but also it's now enhanced. And now I get another layer from it. So I appreciate that. And like I said, I do like the self-indulgent brunch part. I think it's like like I'm okay with certain self-indulgences if they're fun.
You know what I'm trying, like,
Even though my eyes glazed over.
what I'm laughing, trying to imagine is there's a rap in the show / movie that's performed
Oh my
by,
god.
that's performed by a real black person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was just thinking, it's like Jonathan Larson had to perform that by himself on an empty stage at some point. Can you imagine how cringy that must have been?
I was just thinking, like, oh, it was kind of cringy in the movie too, because didn't like Andrew Garfield come out in that part, and it's shot like an MTV
Yeah,
music
they kind of
video.
paid lip service to it. I mean, it's shot like a '90s music video, which I thought was funny.
The whole time, I was like, I hope that this was written and reappropriated by like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who knows how to kind of write rap, and nope, it's written by Jonathan Larson, who doesn't really write rap. So this is just like either an homage or a parody. Either way, it doesn't look good. That's the only thing.
Oh, it looks so
thought.
bad, especially in this day and age.
And also, like, I get this feeling from the show that, like, and again, because it's partially autobiographical and partially because Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think, is a huge fan of Jonathan Larson. There's this sort of like precious quality to all of the music. Like, he cannot do wrong with any of these songs, which makes that part even worse to me. Where I'm like, oh, it's even cringier now, because it's like, no, see, this isn't bad at all. This is fine. Let's have like the whitest guy in the Bronx write a rap song. Like,
I did like the '90s music video they had to go with it, where it had like everything I hate about theater, just like plastered all over the background. It's like all the different plays are like white people arguing about marriage.
that is kind of true. I never thought about that. Like,
It was like, it's like I can't, I'm trying to remember some of the posters that they have behind Tariq Trotter as he's rapping.
mm-hmm.
But like there's one that's like you liked him on TV, so you'll kind of like him in this play. It's like the movie, the musical. And then white people arguing about marriage.
You liked him on TV, so you might like him in this musical. The other thing is, like, Andrew Garfield is really good in this movie.
Yeah, he's great.
Like, his singing is okay. It's fine. It's passable. But he plays the ultimate annoying theater kid, and yet you don't absolutely hate him at the end, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And even though he has like really weird hair throughout the whole movie. So
There is I don't know, like I said, I don't know when it changed, but at some point in time, Andrew Garfield went from being like Mr. Super Cool Guy in like The Social Network and The Amazing Spider-Man to being like a dopey puppy in like Hacksaw Ridge and Tick Tick Boom and Spider-Man No Way Home and yeah. So I don't know where that changed, but it almost works in his favor in this context.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at it here because Hacksaw Ridge was 2016. Maybe in 99 Homes. But I guess Hacksaw Ridge would have been it. I'm trying to.
Under the Silver Lake, he's like a dopey puppy in that movie too.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I want to say it's like during his theater work. I don't know. And then he was in Angels in America in 2017. So I don't know. It's so weird. I thought he was in so much more stuff than he actually is in, which is kind of surprising to me because I feel like I'd heard him or seen him in.
Yeah, I always forget that he's the main character in Silence. Yeah.
It's like it's weird. He was in a movie called Mumbo Jumbo. It's a short film. I'm like, I kind of need to see that just because I hope it's as good as I think it is. Oh, and he was in Lions for Lambs. I started watching that and got bored.
Yeah. Is that Robert Redford?
Yeah, it's like Robert Redford is having a debate with his students about like the entry into the Iraq War.
Good lord,
and
that's like white people arguing about marriage, the movie version.
well, Tom Cruise plays a senator in it. So he's like, that's his return to serious acting after.
There's no version of mass audiovisual media worse than like the overly talk heavy political / financial drama. Like they made so many movies out of the crash of '08.
Yeah.
And they're all like shitty like HBO, original movie type movies.
And all of them do a bad job of explaining it.
Well, and they're all just so like self-indulgent and boring, and they just shout finance words. And like I know the stocks. I know stonks. We are smart. And then it's like, fuck you. Fuck this movie.
It's like
have someone shoot somebody. Come on.
Like the thing about it is like, yeah, can't you see how all of these stockbrokers and stock traders are bad? This movie was financed by a company that definitely owes, that definitely is funded by those same stockbrokers and stock traders. Like it's a mild form of hypocrisy, but it's still hypocrisy.
Well, it's like, I don't know. Whenever I see another movie like that get made, or like a movie about the Iraq War, but it's not about the war, it's about people in America arguing about the war, like Lions for Lambs or something.
Yeah.
There's a quote by Cormac McCarthy that I always think of, where he was saying it's like he's like, I don't understand that Henry James or Madame Bovary or any of that crap. If it's not about life and death, it's not literature. And I'm like, God damn.
Wait, but wasn't Madame Bovary like about life and death? Like, wasn't her husband like gonna kill her if he finds out that?
I think it's just about a woman having an affair.
Well, and then Cormac McCarthy made The Counselor.
It's white people arguing about marriage. Matthew.
To be fair, Lions for Lambs, which starred Andrew Garfield, which is why we're talking about this in the first place, did open to negative reviews and disappointing box office receipts. But that also might be because Robert Redford's movies that he directs are incredibly boring. So, no offense if you like any Robert Redford movies.
Is he still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, I know he retired, but is he retired from living?
No, man, he was in Avengers Endgame.
Fuck, he was? I mean, I haven't seen Avengers Endgame, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, he was in Avengers Endgame. He was in Captain America: The Winter Soldier as well.
Well,
he was
I've seen that.
He offers the Winter Soldier a glass of milk, and suddenly, like, all I want is milk. So that's how I knew that Robert Redford was a good actor. I was like,
he's a great actor.
Yeah, he is. He's awesome. But for a long time, I was like, I don't know, Robert Redford's not that good of an actor. He's just kind of bland. But he's good. He's good. He's solid. He's a solid actor. He knows how to play everything in his range. He never gets too insane. Histrionic, I guess, would be a good. But yeah, like the one thing I liked about going back to Tick Tick Boom is it felt like a very honest portrayal of suffering through the creative process. Mm-hmm. Because I think the part that like strikes me the most is when he has his eureka moment. He's like, I've got it. He goes to type it down on his like Apple II computer, and then all the power shuts down, and he's like, son of a bitch. Yeah. And he's arguing with the power company, like on a phone line that works, but I thought he didn't have power. Whatever. But like that part where it's just like trying to hit that breakthrough, and like you will only hit that breakthrough when you finally let go of everything, feels very, very raw and real to me.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's like everything works until you need it to. creatively, you know?
Yep.
Like, you're always exploding with ideas, and like you feel like you can do anything until you have to do something. You're like, fuck, I don't know.
Isn't this great? Yeah, but there's an issue in the second act that you never got to, and you even have a note here that says I have to get to it. I'll get to it later.
I know.
Also that feeling of like, especially like for creative people, and especially like after coming out of college, just that idea of I need to do something, I need to do something, I need to do this thing, I have to do this thing. I've been working on it so long for such a, and so hard, and it's consumed my life so much. And like, I'm ready to get it out there and get started on it. And like, I need to make it. Oh my God, I'm turning 30. I have no idea what I'm actually doing. All of my ideas are bad. And then it's like, you have to let go of that idea of there being a time limit on it, a time bomb, as you will, for either succeeding in this thing or the bomb going off, which I also thought was something that's very like relative to most people's lives. Like I said, it hasn't hit you yet, but like there is a strong pressure to feel successful. Because like if you think about it, Orson Welles made Citizen Kane at 24. What have you done lately? Yeah, that mentality. And it's like, it's important to realize that everyone it sounds like a bad self-help book. Everyone has their own process. Everyone will get to that process in time. And you just have to work through your own, quote, spiritual journey, unquote.
It does help me feel a little better when you look at like a lot of people who became super successful in their 20s, and you look them up on Wikipedia and their parents have blue names. So it's like, you know what? Maybe it's not so bad. I got time.
Yeah, and again, also think about how many people get really successful early on and then just burn out. Like, what's more important, having a sustainable career or getting everything you wanted really early and then faltering because you didn't know how to handle it properly?
Yeah, like John Lennon.
Oh, rest in peace.
I've noticed I've started to see more and more of the Beatles were terrible actually stuff on social media.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm glad that the worm is finally turning. Like, people are waking up.
Oh, was it because of the documentary, the Peter Jackson documentary, Get Back?
No, I think it's just their music sucks and people have finally realized it's not good.
I don't know about that, but maybe I'm just too like ingrained in it where I'm like, oh yeah, I enjoyed the Beatles. Oh, all the songs sound the same until they didn't.
They all do sound the same, and it's just them saying like the chorus over and over.
It's I appreciate their music. I enjoy their changes, but by the time they hit the 70s and they got into the psychedelic drugs and like they started getting really super weird, that's when I'm like, I don't really know if I know this, if I like this band as much as I do. But like, I grew up on like the oldies stuff. Well, it was oldies back then with like the 1950s like surf band culture with the Beach Boys. So I'm fine with the Beatles. The Beatles.
It's called Pet Sounds because it's only fit for dogs to listen to.
Mean. I mean, like, I wonder
I
if it's also
hate the Beach Boys, so.
Ouch. Oh, man. You're not going to get around.
Oh.
The bad guys know you and they leave you alone. It's a line. It's my favorite line because they're like, I don't think they're actually saying the bad guys know us and they leave us alone, but I like to think that they do. Just like every time in a Shakespeare or an Old English thing they call someone a villain, I'm like, yes, we need to bring back villain. He's a villain! I tell ya, he's a villain. I'm looking at this cast list and the last. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
You first.
Jinx, you owe me a soda. I guess one other thing that's kind of neat about the movie is it did give like a lot of kind of career Broadway people chance to be on the big screen in like major roles.
Yeah. At least show up for a little bit of it.
Yeah. Well, like the guy who plays his best friend is apparently just like a career Broadway guy.
Oh, okay. Robin de Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is nice. What's his name? I know in that, like, all of the cameos in that one scene, Andre de Shields, for example, he's been kind of showing up a little bit more frequently, but I was like, oh, huh, I recognize that guy. Felicia Rashad. Man, it must be nice to, like, have all of these people as friends so that they can just, like, come in for a day of shooting. Hey, here's my cameo. Like, he brought a bunch of people from Rent in for that day as well. I was going to say that... what was I going to say? I think I lost it. I lost my train of thought.
Nice.
No, I didn't. I remembered it. Stephen Sondheim. I loved watching Bradley Whitford play Stephen Sondheim.
Bradley Whitford give a very, very manneristic, over-the-top cameo as Stephen Sondheim.
I mean, I like Bradley Whitford, and I like it when he comes in on these like small cameo roles. Yeah, it's it's also funny because like I think I watched this maybe a week after Sondheim passed away, and so like watching this, I was like, I wonder what Sondheim thought about Bradley Whitford's interpretation of his character, of him.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like his performance of Sondheim is exceptionally cartoonish.
Yeah.
Which is always weird when like I don't know, like a lot, like all the performances in the movie fit a certain mode. It's like that like musical dramedy where everything is like a little heightened. And then and then Bradley Whitford looks like he's on Saturday Night Live. Like he's not playing Sondheim, more so he's doing an impression of Sondheim, if that makes sense.
I was just thinking of like when you first watch A Streetcar Named Desire and everyone is like doing like quote film acting unquote, and then Marlon Brando comes in and like slurs all of his lines. It's like the same thing. It's like one of these things doesn't belong.
I know.
But I still like yeah, it was very much like almost a caricature of who Sondheim was. But I also thought it was like pretty good casting because I was like, yeah, he does kind of look like Sondheim. Yeah, it kind of works. Especially because Sondheim was like super old at that point and on death's door. So I need to stop saying things like that. That's like,
I know. Wasn't that the 90s that this took place?
no, I mean like when they were filming the movie.
Oh.
Yeah. No, in the 90s he was still, yeah. He could still get out there. Or the 80s, I think. I think it was like the early 80s because he wanted to do the show itself sounds both like really fascinating and a little bit cringy, where it's like a zombie apocalypse on stage. Like,
wait,
who's
Superbia?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like interesting, at least. Very high concept.
I just like imagine everyone wearing like 1950s sci-fi outfits and like running around on stage with laser guns.
I mean, it's so Superbia is interesting because it's at the time it just sounds like, oh, this is like a commentary on celebrity culture or whatever, and it seems like I don't know how to put it. It just seems like it sounds
a train
like
wreck.
Like, well, potentially, like it could turn into Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark, but I mean, I'm talking about subject matter wise. I mean, it sounds like it could be, like some old head, like TV bad type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now it seems like weirdly prescient, where the whole subject of his weird sci-fi rock musical, like you would think like, oh, this is like it's a commentary on something specific to that time, but everything it's commenting on, like people being obsessed with celebrity culture and just living their lives virtually on screens and all this shit has just gotten way, way, way worse in the 30 years since.
Yeah. I mean, he's either like incredibly prescient, is that the word?
Prescient.
About it. Prescient, like a president. Prescient about it, or it was like slightly tweaked to make it more applicable to today's audiences. I don't know.
That could be it too.
You tell me.
I'll say this: the version of Superbia that they portray in the movie is way ahead of its time.
So you know how you were talking about like, oh, turn this movie into a musical. So there's only one movie musical that I actually want to see, and that one is The Bodyguard, because it seems so corny.
What the Kevin Costner Whitney Houston movie is a
Yeah.
musical?
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, apparently it's really good too. Like it transcends sort of the corny nature of like the surface level of it.
This sounds like something theater nerds would say, and those people are not trustworthy.
Oh my god. No, here we go. We're going to go on Wikipedia. Everyone who's listening, type in The Bodyguard and not the soundtrack, the 1992 film. And scroll down and you'll see where is it here? Musical adaptation, The Bodyguard musical. A musical adaptation of the film opened in London's Adelphi Theatre in West End in fall 2012. They received the stage rights from Kevin Costner and Lawrence Kasdan. Yeah, by the way, The Bodyguard was one of the first Lawrence Kasdan like produced screenplays, or what was one of his first screenplays that he wrote, and it just toiled for a really long time. Also, The Bodyguard was not as good as I wanted it to be, and I was sad. But yeah, it just like I read the synopsis of it, and I read in Act 2, and there's like the moment. Have you seen The Bodyguard?
No.
Okay. So there's a moment that happens in the movie, and it's a little bit corny, but it seems like they crank that up to like 11 in the musical, and it just sounds amazing. It sounds like, yeah. So I want to see it because like I appreciate The Bodyguard. By the way, the main character's favorite movie is Yojimbo, fittingly. In the Bodyguard. But anyway.
This is the one thing you and Kevin Costner's fictional character have in common.
Yeah, pretty much. And a love of Colorado, maybe. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about Tick Tick Boom?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's mainly just, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda, geez, it's a tongue twister. He does a good job translating a one-man show into a full-fledged movie and giving it a lot of energy and stuff. I think the music is kind of hit or miss, and sometimes misses pretty badly. Contextualizing the events of the movie through like documentary footage and stuff was a terrible idea. We don't need to know any of that, and the story works better, I think, just through the eyes of the fictional version of the main character, you know.
You're talking about the very end of the movie
and the
like
very
the credits?
beginning.
Okay.
Like we don't need to know any of that.
Yeah. I think like for some people, because I think a lot of people are going to see it as like, oh, this is the Jonathan Larson autobiography, because that's what I thought it was. So having those documentary scenes helped to contextualize it for me, but I can see how it would be one of those things where it's like,
it's manipulative, I think.
Yeah, it is, especially when you spend most of the movie being like, God, you're a self-centered little shit.
I know, and then he died.
And then he died.
Never got to see da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, okay, no, don't do that.
Just let Andrew Garfield perform. He's sympathetic enough.
Yeah, Andrew Garfield's amazing. He's so good. And like the song he does, and there's just like a piano in the middle of Central Park for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't mention that one. Yeah.
I don't know why it's there, but the song he does on that is really good.
Yeah.
That one, the finale was good because it mainly just for story reasons more so than the song itself. If you listen to the lyrics of the song, they're pretty generic, but like it's a good story moment where it's like, okay, self-obsessed artist prick like realizes the world is bigger than him and decides to make, to try and do something more meaningful with his life or with what his creative output is. I thought it was a good all-rounder, solid, maybe even a high witness. It does portray the just banging your head against a wall nature of creative work very, very well.
Yeah.
It was good.
It reminded also, I forgot, there was that one scene where he's in the focus group and he's the only one coming up with like really good ideas.
The focus group was great.
I loved that scene. I thought it was especially like he doesn't really care about being there and he's like, wait, but maybe I could do this, just coming up with ideas. And then they're like, all right, good. And how now are we going to use these ideas to sell toothpaste? And you just see him completely deflate and start looking out the window. And it's just like, oh man, I gotcha. I get it. And actually, I'm glad to see that the Academy Award did nominate Andrew Garfield for Best Actor. So we will see how that goes, I'm sure.
Yeah, he does a ton of work to carry the movie. I also like there's another song where his friend gets a fancy new apartment because his friend's in advertising.
Yeah.
And the song again is whatever, but the way it is rendered on screen I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's a really good, like a lot of that stuff. I mean, we talk about director choices and like maybe it was smart to have a guy who knows musicals really well, break all of the musical rules.
Oh yeah, because it's like you look at most like the classic movie musicals, there's not a whole lot of editing. You kind of stay far away and like let the performers perform and all that. Whereas this is edited like crazy, but not in a bad way because it really uses cinematic tools to break the rules of continuity and time and space and create more of a almost like a montage like you would see in a music video, except it's that mixed with the performers performing. So his friend gets a new apartment. It's a fancy high-rise in like Midtown or something. And so the song is about like, welcome to fancy living, here we come. Goodbye to living in a shithole in the Bronx. And they're like Andrew Garfield and Mr. Robin DeJesus.
I think his character is like Matt Gray.
His character is
Michael.
like Matthew or something.
Michael.
What was I gonna say? I completely lost my train of thought.
They're dancing and it I'm trying to remember. Do they go back and forth between like the shitty apartment and the new one?
Yeah, so like they're dancing and singing in full view. It's sometimes in costume, sometimes not. Like sometimes they're in a real space, sometimes they're in like kind of a fantasy space. That's kind of how they imagine their lives could be. But it's cutting between the fancy high rise and their shit apartment that they came from. And it's like that obviously breaks a lot of the conventional rules of like how do you do a musical in a movie, but it works really well. And what rules Miranda breaks and how and when is different for each song, and it's appropriate for the context in most cases anyway. So yeah, I mean, I think like Garfield and Miranda are kind of the major reasons to watch this. They both really delivered. They went above and beyond, I think, what a lot of people, including me, would have expected.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, I love Andrew Garfield as an actor. I wouldn't have thought he'd be able to carry a musical, but he can. And then, Miranda, I'm not a fan of anything he's ever done, but he did a really good job here.
Hey, man. Moana's good stuff, all right? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson can rap. Man, just kidding. I like Lin-Manuel Miranda's stuff. So I'm partial to it, but I wasn't sure. I get tired of like the people who are like, "Oh yeah, I've done this creative and I am a novelist. I can direct a movie." Like, can you? So I always kind of
Michael Crichton.
Oh, the 13th Warrior.
Oh, Westworld.
Oh my God, did he direct the Westworld movie?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Or like D.B. Weiss and David Benioff. I think they ended up directing a handful of episodes of Game of Thrones. So haven't gotten there yet, but a little bit nervous. And actually, well, anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that because, like, yeah. So going from one Academy Award nominee for Best Actor to another, let's talk about The Power of the Dog, which you gave a shiny and chrome to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still feel that way?
Yep.
I think it is a high witness, low shiny and chrome. Probably a low shiny and chrome to a solid shiny and chrome, just because after finishing the movie, it really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, go ahead and give us a brief synopsis of The Power of the Dog, if you remember.
Yeah. So, George and Benedict Cumberbatch. Phil. George and Phil are two very wealthy ranchers who own one of the largest cattle ranches in
a state
that is very close to Utah, but not
Montana.
It's Montana.
All right.
And Phil is quiet and reserved, and George is a charismatic asshole. George ends up falling in love with a widow, Rose, and ends up marrying her and bringing her to live on the ranch with him, as well as her very effeminate son, Peter. Phil hates everything feminine because the ranch to him is supposed to be like a manly space. So he basically begins a campaign of psychological warfare to try and destroy the mom. And yeah, hilarity ensues.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up going full on spoilers for this movie because
Have to.
Yeah, I mean, the ending is just so compelling too.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's like if you haven't seen it, watch it now before we spoil it.
Yeah.
Just so like the ending is one of those endings that like it's like a sledgehammer to the back of the head in a dark alley. Like you don't see it coming, but it hits really hard. So
yeah. There is something about it where it's like if I break down the story to its base elements, it feels like a very simple story, which I like. It's 2 hours plus a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like all of the I'll say it. All of the performances are good. Even Jesse Plemons, who you were 100% right. This is the most Jesse Plemons in a movie I've seen. I just watching him because Benedict Cumberbatch he puts on the Doctor Strange accent a little bit, but also his proportions are so weird. Did you ever play with those cheap little plastic toys that you would bend over and they would spring? It was like a little man that you'd bend over and spring who had really flat legs, really flat rounded legs, and a really square body. Do you know what I'm talking about? So they have all of these wide shots of Benedict Cumberbatch where it looks where it's his body looks kind of like a thin pogo stick, and then his legs look like two blankets that are flowing in the wind.
Oh, it's because he's wearing those huge chaps and his legs are always bowed out wider.
I know, but it was just so funny. I would just watch the whole time and I'm like, Benedict Cumberbatch's proportions look so weird in this movie. So I couldn't I was just the cinematography his proportions are so weird. I don't know. But you're critical of Benedict Cumberbatch, but did you find that you appreciated his methods in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I thought all the actors did a really good job, Cumberbatch included. I don't think Benedict Cumberbatch is a bad actor, even though I make fun of him a lot. I think I just don't like him as Doctor Strange. I really don't like him in that role. In general, I think he's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, everyone does a great job in this movie. I mean, I tried to sell it to you on the Jesse Plemons angle.
It worked. It worked so well. I was I'm gonna have to see this just for Jesse Plemons alone.
But yeah, I mean, everyone's great in this.
There's also I was telling my wife that I do kind of enjoy movies that take this whole idea of they're cowboys, they're masculine, they're hard men, blah blah blah, and you're it sounds a little homoerotic, and they're it's not homoerotic at all. So I kind of like this. I like it when people are challenged with this notion of you mean that thing where a bunch of guys go taking a bunch of cows and go camping and have to bathe in like they did in this movie. They're bathing in ponds together and oh, it's so hot, let me take off my shirt, and I'm dude, this is the fact that I think if it were done so Blazing Saddles ruined the Western for a lot of people, but I think anytime they talk about sort of the homoeroticism of the cowboy genre, it's almost always in a drama trying to deconstruct it. Cowboys are extremely homoerotic. You don't think about it. It's no, let's spit, guys, so we can get our masculinity back. And it's I think if they just made a very, very obvious satire of it, I don't know if we would ever see a Western again.
Possible.
But so before we get into spoilers, a lot of people are talking about Johnny Greenwood's score and how it's one of the best of the year. What do you think about what did you think about the music on this? Did this work its way into your brain?
No, but I mean, it was good. Johnny Greenwood's scores are always good.
I know that he did because of There Will Be Blood, so that's how I'm aware of him in his scores. But I will say he does a really good job of creating these scores that are that are very psychological in nature, and kind of get into you that way. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's his scores are very subtle, so there's not a whole lot to say about them to me anyway. Because it's on Netflix, if you scroll past it or if you click on it, the trailer starts playing and you just hear the guitar starting to strum, and I'm oh yeah, that song. Ooh, this does kind of make me want to watch it again. Oh, maybe I should put it on. All right. So I'm all right, the score is clearly working. And then also the movie's been praised for its cinematography. I have mixed feelings about that, but what are your thoughts on the way it was shot? The way it's shot is functional, I would say. It gets the job done, but it's not an especially beautiful or amazing execution, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I think it's pretty standard for the Western genre, which is why I was surprised to find out it's been nominated for an Academy Award for cinematography. Like, it's good, but it's not anything better than other Westerns that we had seen.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering what I'm missing, or if it's just because it was released towards the end of the year. They're like, oh, we got to list something. Let's list the large, vast landscape movie because we're shooting large, vast landscapes.
Yeah, I really don't know. It's not bad or anything. It works very well, but yeah, it was nothing like I was super jazzed about.
Yeah.
I think it's the way Jane Campion puts everything together that I think is what makes the movie good. It's not just the disparate elements, but it's all of it. Because it uses all the cinematic tools it has on hand to tell a story that's very subtle and that respects the intelligence of the audience to just kind of feel their way through what's happening without having to be told or shown anything.
Yes.
And that's exceptionally rare in this day and age.
Yeah. I guess, is this technically an Australian movie? Or is it a New Zealand movie? All right, because it feels like an Australian movie because it's so depressing. But I guess
Jane Campion's a Kiwi.
Where's the joy? Where's the joy, Jane?
Where's the unbridled joy? It's funny. I was talking to a coworker of mine who's like traveled all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying that, like, in New Zealand, everyone is just really funny. And I was like, that makes sense, given what their movies are like. She's like, oh, yeah, like, in New Zealand, everyone is just hilarious.
I mean, like, we've talked about that, about how, like, the different like, Australian movies are, like, really bleak and depressing, and New Zealand movies are, like, really fun. It's good to know that the people are exactly the same. So I guess I won't be visiting Australia. So let's kind of go into the movie because, like, I agree, a lot of it does happen really subtly, and it kind of starts off that way for me with, like, I was constantly wondering why George isn't talking to Phil. That was my first question in the movie. Because it seems like something has happened and we never find out what it is. But, like, it could just be something as simple as, like, George got tired of Phil calling him fatso.
Yeah, like, he doesn't really fit in. So, like, Phil has created an alternate world on their ranch. It's like this regime that only subscribes to what he values and what he believes in. And, he's very romantic about, like, the ranch lifestyle and, like, the manly world of cowboys. He hates polite society. He hates women. He hates anything that is, like, soft or feminine or that goes against, like, the rough and tumble world of cowboys that he is so in love with. Like, in the book, he even, like, goes on these long tirades, or, like, it's his internal monologue, but, these long tirades about, like, how he doesn't wash his hands. He doesn't use, like, he looks down on people who use napkins when eating at a restaurant. He hates, like, parties. There's so many things that he hates that are just part of the regular world outside of ranch life. But it's all because he has this very specific vision of how he wants things to be. And anything that's in conflict with that, he's immediately hostile to. It's also why he has this really fractious relationship with his parents, because, like, they show up halfway through the movie and they're, like, having a little cocktail party. And he looks at them like, what the hell are you people doing here?
Yeah.
It's like, you guys are, like, ruining my ranch, even though it's, like, their parents gave him the ranch,
Right.
But I mean that's also why he has such, he's hostile towards his brother, because his brother is just kind of this pudgy guy who, doesn't really, he doesn't live hard like Phil does, or like the other cowboys do. There's the other whole thing where like Phil is supposed to be super smart, like he went to like a fancy university and he reads all these scientific books and he's good with his hands. Meanwhile, George flunked out of college and just kind of reads like penny dreadfuls and can't do anything with his hands.
Oh, George made that drink. I won't be having any of it.
Yeah,
Oh.
Exactly.
It's like, I guess we know who the parents love.
Well, it's funny because in the book, the parents actually are like kind of terrified of Phil, and they think there's something wrong with him.
Have you read the book?
Yeah.
Oh, when did you read it after watching the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. I think you told me that. Okay.
But yeah, in the movie, it's portrayed more that like they like Phil more than George. But it's almost more that they just don't like George. Because they don't even seem to like Phil that much either.
They're just like, these boys are wasting all of our money by making us more, but still. Okay, so then they go to eat at this inn, and that's when you run into Kirsten Dunst and her son, played by Cody Smit-McPhee, who like is just very. He has a very particular look about him. Everything
He
I
looks
see
like a
him.
band kid.
I mean, he was young Nightcrawler in the X-Men movies, and that's like pretty fitting.
Yeah, exactly. Although he was in another Western, Slow West, a few years ago. That was actually pretty good, and he was pretty good in it.
He should just be in Westerns.
Yeah.
He was also in Dolomite Is My Name.
Nice.
And he was like, that movie is awesome. Like, the more I think about it, the more fun I think I realize the movie is. Oh, he was in The Road as well.
Mm-hmm. He's the kid.
Oh.
But yeah,
Anyway.
so he should just be in Westerns.
Yeah, he should. It's just like, that's his Westerns
his
and
genre.
movies about movies. Like all budding Academy Award winners want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So like we're introduced to him, and Phil is very like cold to him, calls him names and makes fun of his lisp and his effeminate manner.
Yeah, and he sets his like paper flowers on fire.
Yeah, that was like hardcore. Like it's all of these little subtle things that develop slowly that work so well in that opening scene. And
Yeah, well, because the whole movie is about like the small interactions between people and how their dynamics are shaped by the world around them and then go on to reshape the world around them.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's like Phil at never point says anything that I have said about him as a person or his character, but he just acts that way towards everyone. It's all implied. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you pay any attention, it's super obvious, but it never is actually said.
Right. Well, some of it is kind of conveyed, like Phil is smart is never said, but oh yeah, he got those 2 degrees. It's like, oh, then we can figure out that he's an intelligent guy. We can tell that he's hard just by the way he acts, but also by like how he looks. And there's that scene where he's castrating the bull, which I was like both disgusted and fascinated by. And he's like, oh, he doesn't wear gloves, but he doesn't need to because he never cuts himself. Even though now we look at that and we're like, oh my God, it's so disgusting. But like, one, at the time, probably, I don't even know if surgeons were using gloves back then.
I think were, yeah.
Okay. But 2, he's like, oh, all of the stuff I have is super clean. So he's like the super rugged guy, but doesn't deal with diseased animals. So the assumption is like, oh, well, if I'm dealing with pure stuff, then I don't have to worry about disease because it's pure stuff.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. And
it's like all these little details accumulate, not only to give you a picture of the world, but also to drive the plot.
Right.
Because it's like Phil doesn't wear gloves is a hugely important plot point.
Yeah.
Like, So it's just like it's one of these little things that like they never ever make a big deal out of, but you're constantly reminded in very subtle ways. Like, oh, he again working with no gloves while everyone else is wearing gloves, and so on and so on and so on. And then the fact that he doesn't wear gloves ends up being like incredibly important.
Yeah. I wonder if that has any like ramifications of like the symbolism. Well, we'll talk about that a little later. Jesse Plemons ends up marrying Rose, who was she the owner of the inn, and then she just sells the inn. Now, was that inn close by where they live, or was that? I thought that was like a bit further out on the route that they would take.
It's a bit further out on the route that they take on their big cattle drive that they do.
Okay. So they get married relatively quickly, and I didn't realize this when I was watching it, but by getting married, that allows them to send the boy, Peter, to college.
Yeah, so they send him to medical school.
With his dad's books.
Mm-hmm. Because his dad was a doctor.
Okay. And then they move in, and you can hear them. You watch Benedict Cumberbatch as he's strumming his banjo and awkwardly listening to Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons have sex in the next room. Which is then followed by like a scene of Benedict Cumberbatch bathing himself, and you get to see, if you look closely, if you squint, you could probably see a little bit of Benedict Cumberbatch. So there you go. You got to see a lot of Benedict Cumberbatch in this movie. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
For women who are attracted to Benedict Cumberbatch when he's acting his most assholey. So the scene where George, played by Jesse Plemons, is like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have a dinner, and I invited my parents and the governor, so that
his nibs."
His nibs.
That's what he calls the governor.
That's right. I have invited some people to dinner. Those people that I have invited, I am about to tell you now. Can you play the piano? Please play my favorite song. You know the song. That is my favorite song.
The Gypsy.
You know the Gypsy song. Like, I am about to leave for the town, my brother. I will go and see you there. So also Benedict Cumberbatch is obsessed with the guy who taught him how to ride, named Bronco Henry.
If you know
Bronco
what I mean.
Henry. Yeah. But all of that, well, he talks a lot about Bronco Henry. Bronco Henry told us how to raise cattle the best, and Bronco Henry did this, and so much so that he has a shrine to Bronco Henry's saddle, which, you know, not suggestive at all.
I know.
You ride Bronco Henry. I'm going to ride Bronco Henry's saddle, said Dr. Strange.
He's also got Bronco Henry's bandana.
Yeah. I don't know why I found that funny. Like that scene with the bandana. Like I found it kind of funny. But so the scene that I like is when Kirsten Dunst is like, Jesse Plemons gets a brand new grand piano. And so she's trying to play the song that she's trying to learn. And you just hear, I was listening to it on my headphones. So in both of the headphones, I hear the piano, but then out of like the right headphone, I start to hear a banjo play. And then she stops and she starts playing again. And you hear the banjo and it's a little bit louder. And I was like, oh, is he playing with, oh no, he's not playing with her. He's intimidating her. Yeah. And it's so effective. I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. It's so subtle, but it's so effective. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize when I watched it originally that like she was kind of like Bradley Cooper from Nightmare Alley. I don't drink alcohol, and then becomes like a raging alcoholic like 4 scenes later. By the way, in our Nightmare Alley episode, we didn't mention, because like Benedict Cumberbatch was saying how he made and smoked so many cigarettes that it gave him problems. It gave him lung problems. Jeez. But like they don't smoke nearly as many cigarettes in this movie as they do in like the first half of Nightmare Alley, let alone the second half. So Nightmare Alley episode brought to us by Philip Morris. Anyway, yeah, she starts going, she's like really intimidated by Phil and starts going crazy. And then the boy comes home. And he's kind of afraid. That's when I thought the movie, like I thought the movie would be there earlier, but that's like half the movie is just establishing how Phil exerts his control over everything, over the house and everything. Yeah. So then the boy moves in, and like at first Phil is kind of cruel to him, and then on
Little Lord Fauntleroy.
Yeah.
I still can't get over that that's Benedict Cumberbatch's American accent, but anyway.
So like I had started watching The Power of the Dog, and then my wife and I were talking about Doctor Strange, and like because the Multiverse of Madness is supposed to be coming out soon and everything like that. So we popped in Doctor Strange, and I was like between like the Spider-Man movies, the Avenger movies, Doctor Strange, The Power of the Dog, like I think I only hear Benedict Cumberbatch's American accent right now. Like when I look at him, he's like if he was gonna read something, he's like, yeah, I really enjoyed working on this movie that I was on with all of these great cast of members. And I'm like, oh no, I need to hear his British accent.
I always
this
just
isn't
think
normal.
of Star Trek Into Darkness if I ever need to remember what it sounds like. And how, like, he says, my name is Khan in the most ridiculous way possible.
My name is Khan. To which, like, I love it because, I was watching a video where they're like, yeah, this is supposed to have a lot of relevance for the audience, but they cut to, like, Spirk and Cock.
Spirk and Cock.
Kirk and Spock. And, like, they're just, like, it would have been...
I'm going to just say that now to piss off Star Trek fans.
You mean Cock and Spirk? James Harrison is like, I am Khan, which is kind of ridiculous because like he doesn't look Moroccan at all, but we'll get over that.
You mean Indian?
Indian. Well, isn't Ricardo Montalban Moroccan? Wait.
Ricardo Montalban is like
he's South
American,
American.
I think.
So
yeah, I don't know why they have a dude from like Bolivia or whatever playing an Indian Sikh guy, but it's even weirder to have Benedict Cumberbatch play an Indian.
But they cut to Kirk and Spock, and they're just like I half expected Joman Hansu to be like, who? From Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm Star-Lord. Who? Like,
Who?
I'm Khan.
My name is Khan. I'm a doctor, not a Trekkie. What the fuck does that mean?
God damn it, Khan. I'm a doctor. I'm a Star Trek fan. There is no Khan. I love it how, like, because obviously the timeline thing where, what's his name? Like, sorry to go on this Star Trek tangent, but when Nero's ship goes back in time, like, it goes back in time in such a hardcore way that it literally changes the ethnicity of Khan. Like...
Well, but I don't know if that's possible because Khan is like would have, according to Star Trek lore, Khan would have been born before that.
That's what I'm saying. It's like him going through the black hole causes this
his
seismic shift that
after Khan was already frozen.
Yes. Explain that, J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci. Yeah. I always just leave out that second O. I think his name is Robert Orci. So apologies, Roberto Orci. So anyway, the boy comes back and they kind of insult him. And then one night he's like out and about. Is this before or after he captures the rabbit? This is after he gets the rabbit, right?
It's after he gets the rabbit.
So he captures a rabbit using a trap, and his mom's like, "Oh, that's so great!" And then Thomasin McKenzie is like, "Ooh, can I bring this carrot up to the rabbit?" And she's like, "Yeah, do it." And then you find out that the boy is like a sociopath.
Yeah, he's like dissecting the rabbit in his room
without any sort of remorse. It's like, "Hey, I got to be a better surgeon," you know? Goes into Martin's with, "I got to be a better cutter. I got to cut that film." So I don't know. I'm still cutting the Nightmare Alley episode. I'm actually almost done with it. But there's that moment where like we're talking about Martin Scorsese, and I'm like, I sound like a 1940 newspaper guy. And you're like, in all fairness, so does he.
Yeah.
But like after the rabbit dies, and he's like, "Yeah, I won't dissect any more rabbits." He like stumbles upon Phil in nothing but Bronco Henry's handkerchief.
Yeah,
and like
sunbathing in the nude
at
as
night.
well as his collection of gay porn.
That's also something I told my wife. I'm like, I never thought I'd see so much 1920s gay porn. I was like, okay, that's the verisimilitude is incredible in this movie. So does Phil try to befriend Peter after that because he doesn't want Peter to talk, or because he thinks that Peter is also gay and is trying to groom him, for lack of a better term?
I think it's because he doesn't. I think at first it's because he doesn't want Peter to talk, and then it ends up like he develops some sort of connection to him.
Okay. So Phil is making a rope out of raw cowhide, and he's like, "I'll make this for you, Peter." Oh, gay Westerners. Gay Westerners? Gay Westerns. So they start bonding, and at this time, Kirsten Dunst's character, Rose, she's like a full-blown alcoholic. She hides bottles everywhere and drinks anytime she can just to like get away from it all. And Phil's still like using this as intimidation tactics. So then like Phil takes Peter out, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna teach you how to see the world like Bronco Henry did, because he saw it like no one else." And I guess Peter already sees it kind of like him, because it's like, "Oh yeah, that mountain looks like a dog," which took me a moment to see, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I see that. That's clever." So then they go out, just the two of them, and they find another rabbit, and like in the process of trying to get the rabbit, Phil, Benedict Cumberbatch, gets like a wound. Oh, he also got a wound when he was castrating the cow. Right? So was this wound like the same wound and it just got worse?
No. So that's called foreshadowing.
Right. Thanks, Gabe. I was just checking. I have a lot of questions. Maybe it was too subtle for me. I don't know.
Well, so I guess in the lead up to him, the rabbit scene, so like he teaches Peter how to like ride a horse and rope cattle and stuff like that. He teaches him about like the trails up into the mountains that like the Lewis and Clark expedition went on. And Peter goes on his own adventures up there.
He does.
But yeah, so they go and
well, he finds something in one of his adventures.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so he and Phil are putting up fence posts, and Phil cuts his hand while like kind of tormenting a rabbit. And the rabbit breaks its leg, so Peter just like executes it emotionlessly.
Which also, again, Peter, potential sociopath. But I think, and I'm guessing that Phil liked that. Like, that's my assumption, is like, oh, because they later have a conversation about how Peter cut down, like Peter's dad was an alcoholic, and said that Peter wasn't nice enough. To which Phil was like, huh, he sure got that wrong.
Yeah.
Or did he? Set up. And then, but he found his father who had hung himself, and Peter was the one who cut him down. And the way that he talked about it was very like emotionless, like very cold.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, Rose sees that they've left, and also found out that I don't understand why Phil does this. Why does Phil just burn all of the hides that he doesn't use instead of selling them? Because he likes it. Because he's an asshole.
Yeah, it brings him joy. So yeah, they have these piles of cow hides that Phil uses to make a big old bonfire every year. And like this Native American guy and his son come through, and you know, like they're like, hey, like, you know, can we trade you for any of these hides? And they're like, no, they're not for sale. And then Kirsten Dunst, in a moment of alcoholic revenge
and brilliance,
sells all the hides to this guy for a pair of gloves.
More foreshadowing. Anyway,
I know.
Gloves, man. Made out of hides, man. The symbolism, man. So then Phil and Peter come back, and Phil's all mad because he actually needed the hides to finish the rope, which I didn't realize why he was so upset that the hides were gone. I just thought he was upset because she had done this thing on her own accord, and then she passes out. But really he's upset because he wanted to finish it's probably both. But really upset because he's like started to find that he's taken a liking to Peter. Mm-hmm. And then Peter's like, oh, but I have hides. I found a cow and I stripped it down because I want to be like you. And so Phil's like, I'm going to stay up all night and finish this. And he does while Peter watches, and they share a cigarette together. They say something that would get, yeah, I was going to say, they say something that would get this thing like stricken from the internet. So we're just not going to say that part, but yeah, they share a cigarette, and Phil talks about how he loves Bronco Henry so much. One of the reasons is because, you know, Bronco Henry saved his life because they slept nude next to each other so that neither of them would catch frostbite in the same sleeping bag. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, so then the next day, Phil has completed the rope and drops dead of anthrax poisoning.
It's a lot more compelling in the movie.
I know. The way it's done in the movie, it's like this very slow reveal. And yeah, he dies of anthrax poisoning. And it's like you're like, how? And then all of a sudden, everything that's ever happened in the movie up until this point runs through your head. And you're like, oh, they set this whole thing up from the very beginning. But we just weren't paying attention.
I will say the one like audience spelling it out moment was when the doctor comes up to Jesse Plemons and he's like, hello, doctor, how are you this day? And the doctor's like, yeah, we're still waiting for the results, but it was weird. It looks like he died of anthrax. And Jesse Plemons is like, how can that be? He never used animals that were diseased. And you think back to a very particular scene of Peter on... This is like full-on spoilers, but you see Peter on the trail, and he finds a dead cow, and he puts on his gloves and takes out his knife or his scalpel, and that's the cowhide that is used. By the way, this movie is nominated for a lot of awards, but it is not nominated for... sound editing or sound mixing, which is a shame because the sound of the sound effects in this movie are great, and the sound effects of Benedict Cumberbatch making that rope and listening to like the leather straps stretch in like an ominous way, as it also is like rubbing against his skin with the festering wound, is just brilliant. Like that is like like this movie had amazing sound design, and the fact that it's not nominated for any of that is just a flat out shame. So it then is revealed like what's his name? Peter doesn't go to the funeral, which seems kind of strange because you thought for a long time like, oh, but Peter and Phil are becoming so close, like they're kind of becoming buddies. And then Peter goes and he grabs the rope, but he makes sure to grab it with gloves on. And he goes and looks in his little book, and we awkwardly bring in the title of the movie as he's scrolling down, and it says, "Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog." And then Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst get out of a car, and they hug, and they're happy, or they're making out. And I was like, wait, was this all a plan by sociopath Peter to get rid of Phil so that his mom and her new husband can live happily ever after? And he kind of smiles to the camera, and then it cuts to the power of the dog. And I just had a bunch of questions for you. Starting with that one.
I think yes, it was, but it's also like, I mean, it's a mix of him planning and also just luck and coincidence, you know?
Mm-hmm. So do you think he ever really liked Phil, or do you think he was playing Phil as much as Phil was supposed to be trying to play him?
I think he pitied Phil.
And those creatures that he pities, he eliminates.
Yep.
Interesting. Do you think he is? Do you think my read is kind of correct that he's like either a sociopath or a psychopath?
I don't know. Maybe. He's definitely very cold-blooded.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he hated Phil at first, but eventually started to pity him. But I think he has that way of looking at things of like, it's like, you know, it's like, he's like, it's not great killing the rabbit, but killing the rabbit's necessary for me to be a better doctor.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't relish the idea of killing Phil, but killing Phil is necessary so my mom can be happy.
So my mom will stop drinking her weight in alcohol and bankrupting the farm.
Yeah.
So what was it in your, like, was it because everything operates on such a subtle level, like that you really have to be paying attention? And even if you don't, like, if you're just watching the movie and letting it absorb you, you're going to catch all of these things as they're developing,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I like.
It's not one of those movies where you have to pay super close attention, but it's just, if you're watching it, you know, it will give you everything you need to understand what's going on. It's why I kind of got annoyed when the movie came out. There were all these like Power of the Dog ending explained articles from every stupid, you know, media site.
Oh dang!
Like,
I need to read all of those right now. But go ahead.
It's like, these are not necessary unless you're like a goldfish, you know? Yes, it is very subtle, but that's the power of it is in its subtlety. Like, it hits so hard because it just sneaks up on you. And then like once it happens, you get this flood of everything you've seen that the meaning of it didn't register until now. And that's the genius of the movie. And like any, you know, adult with a functioning brain is going to be able to appreciate that. They don't need an article explaining it to them. And well, I think the other thing I like about this is that it does respect people's ability to just feel their way through what's happening and understand without having to be, you know, handheld and explained everything.
So as you can tell, I would have liked a little bit more clarity, but I think that's the clarity I want isn't necessarily like I wanted it spelled out in the movie. The clarity I want is what one of my old professors would say about, you know, you go to dinner in a movie. It's like you go to a movie that's really psychological, and then you go to dinner and spend the rest of the evening talking about the themes and psychology of the movie. So that's what I think about as far as like, oh, if there was one of those clickbaity things, it's like the ending explained. It's like, I just want to make sure that my view of the movie was similar, or if I'm just like way off. Like, am I reading these characters wrong? Did I miss a clue or something like that? So I can understand why those articles came out, because I'm sure there were a bunch of people who were like, bro, what? Like, no dog, like there were dogs that barked, and those dogs that barked responded to whistles. The power that the dogs responded to, the power of the dogs, was in the whistle all along. Like, all right, so like the stoners that go into the movie and they're like, dude, the cowhide and Bronco Henry's saddle, and like riding Bronco Henry's saddle, dude, bro,
Hide, leather,
hide.
saddle, riding.
But that's also why I said like the story is really simple, just executed really well. Because like even though I took my sweet time to go through the story, like the beats of it are really simple. It's like he gets married, intimidation happens, the boy comes home and concocts a plan in order to get back at Phil, and comedic antics ensue. And like I appreciate how that works a lot.
Yeah.
So especially the intimidation thing was done so well, and like to the point where like as soon as you hear his stirrups, ka-ching, 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 coming into the house, the spurs, and as soon as you hear those come into the house, it's just like immediately like a horror villain has entered the house. It's great.
Yeah.
Like I said, sound design, like very underrated, and it's a shame that the Academy just completely missed on it. Is there anything else you wanted to say about Power of the Dog?
I don't know. It's hard because there's like a lot to say, but I think to a huge extent, it's a movie that people just need to see. Because yeah, it's just like it's the plot, at least in like its broad beats, is very simple, but it's just the accumulation of all these little details that make the movie tick, and all these little interactions between characters and stuff. It's a character driven movie in the best way possible, I think. But yeah, I mean it's really, really good.
Yeah. It is really good. I don't really have a lot more to say on it. I think it's definitely worth seeing. It's getting getting a punch of acclaim. It's getting a bunch of acclaim that I think it really deserves. I have seen a couple of these these articles like Johnny Greenwood, it's his time to win an Oscar, and I'm like, sure, I don't know. It's crazy to think that like Jane Campion came out after so long without making a movie, like a decade, and she was just like, no, I've got this. And like it makes me want to look at some of her other movies, but how does this stack up against The Piano and some of the other movies you've seen from her, if you've seen any other ones?
Well, I've only seen The Piano, and both movies have a piano in them.
That was her subtle nod, even though it's written in the book. She's like, look, there's the piano. And if you look underneath the grand piano, you'll see Harvey Keitel's penis. Anyway, the thing that's most
Dixon pianos. That's what Jane Campion's about, apparently.
All of those cowboys who were like sitting naked but with their hat over their cocks made me laugh so hard. I was like, it's the piano all over again. But the two movies are just too different.
Yeah, I mean they're both really good. They're just very different movies.
Okay. Does it have a similar feel or vibe that this one does?
Yeah, kind of. It's despite one being made 20 years ago or more, actually, like 30 years ago at this point. They're both they both have a similar tone and pace, and they tend to they're constructed in very similar ways. The only thing is like the piano has like voiceover that makes everything really obvious, and it's like really weird. what's her name?
Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter. Yeah, it's really weird, like Holly Hunter fake Scottish accent voiceover. Which luckily Power of the Dog is free from.
You mean you didn't want to hear a voiceover from Jesse Plemons awkwardly describing all of the events in the movie?
Awkwardly not describing anything.
I went down to the inn to ask Rose to marry me. She said yes. I walked for a while. I found my car. Wait, I'm looking at this right now. Development and casting. It was announced in May 19 that Campion was to write and direct the film with Benedict Cumberbatch and Elizabeth Moss cast to star. Paul Dano entered negotiations. I'm assuming to be George. Wow. He would be confirmed to star the next month, and Kirsten Dunst came in to replace Elizabeth Moss. However, in November, Dano had to drop out due to Batman. Jesse Plemons was originally offered the role before Dano was cast to replace him. Wow. I saw my brother. He was in a casket. I picked that casket and the suit he wore. He looked pretty good in it. At least that's what I thought. I do think it was interesting, and I do think it was effective that Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst agreed not to speak on set. I didn't know that they had agreed to, but like that's pretty crazy to think about. Like through the entirety of the shoot, they're just like, yeah, we're gonna make sure because then our scenes where we do speak to each other will just be really really tense and really awkward and really power dynamic-y. So, and she was really good. I know we haven't really talked about her that much, but she's having a bit of like a career renaissance of her own. And like, she's just really solid, I think, at this point. Kirsten Dunst, like if you cast her in your movie, you're going to get a very solid actress.
Yeah.
So yeah, go and see it. We both really liked it. And I think that's all I have. What else do you have to say today?
No, that's kind of it. I mean, it's one of the best movies of the year. It deserves, I think, a good chunk of all this acclaim it's getting. Maybe in a stronger year it might place lower, but
yeah,
okay. Everyone should see it.
And if anyone wants to see any of our content, any of our audio content in semi-visual form, where would they go?
Go to YouTube. The Under the Wheels YouTube channel. Our email, if you want to get in touch with us, is podcast@underthewheels.com. And
is it? I thought it was video at underthewheels.com.
Yes, it's video at underthewheels.com. Don't email the other one that doesn't exist. Video at underthewheels.com.
Have we received any fan mail?
I don't know. I hope so. That would be cool. Underthewheels.com is our website. We got a lot of cool stuff there. And like, subscribe, all that good shit. Matt is also doing a podcast on Game of Thrones with his brother, which is really, really long. But if you love Game of Thrones, they go like super duper in depth. Or like you used to love Game of Thrones and then hated it after the last season. Also, they go super duper in depth on the good stuff until they get to the bad stuff. So yeah, that's worth checking out as well. What's it called?
Also, I get flack for this. It's called A Song for Sir Waymar P. Royce. So Waymar Royce is the first knight you're introduced to in Game of Thrones, and subsequently dies 3 pages later. But it just seems like, because like you're not used to reading it. If you start with the prologue, you're not used to reading it. So you like, at least when I was reading it, I was like, oh, Sir Waymar Royce, sir, he's a knight. He must have some significance. He's not even named in the show. They just like, they don't even give him a name. They just kill him off. He's some pompous jackass. So yeah, so that's been like an in-joke between my brother and me for a long time. So we figured we'll make a podcast that no one can find by naming it that.
Oh, man.
This is why I'm not in marketing, Gabe. I wanted to give a shout out to Mike who does our music because we do it every episode. And do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, that's it.
Same for me. I hope you guys check out both of these movies. They're both on Netflix now, and that's been our Netflix extravaganza. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And you've just been Under the Wheels.
Yeah, can you imagine the stand-up comedy down there? It's like, man, I know why you guys call it Macon County, because this county's making me uncomfortable. Ha ha, it gets lynched.
I was watching a video about like, why isn't conservative comedy funny? And and that's what that reminded me of. I'm just like, all of the comedy in Macon, it's just like really bad Tim Allen jokes, just done like even more seriously.
Well, what sucks is Tim Allen actually it's weird because like Tim Allen used to be really funny, but he still is actually. Just not as funny as he used to be.
I was going to say, do you mean intentionally or unintentionally?
Well, he's unintentionally funny now. He was like genuinely hilarious when he was like a crackhead. Well, you know Tim Allen, he's like from Detroit and went to prison for dealing like hard drugs and then came out as a comedian.
You know what's funny about prison? Tim Allen. I would like it's funny because I've tried watching Last Man Standing and I just can't do it.
Oh yeah. No, well, that's a network sitcom. When has a network sitcom ever been funny besides Seinfeld?
Because I remember loving Home Improvement when I was a kid.
Well, Home Improvement was all right. But that was a different time.
But it's like back in the day, I was like, oh man, like Tim Allen needs a career comeback. I want him to do well. He's bringing back the family sitcom. I tried sitting down and watching Last Man Standing now, and it's just like,
but like I said, it's a network sitcom in like the contemporary anti-comedy America, where like it's illegal to be funny. So I'm not surprised that Tim Allen's no longer funny, no matter how conservative he may be.
I don't know. It was mainly he just pushed the politics stuff too far in a direction. Also, every single episode was the same, where it was just like he would do something shitty, and then he would be called out on doing something shitty, but that shitty thing he did ended up being the right thing to do. And I was just
again, this is a network sitcom.
I was like, this is.
I don't know what you're expecting.
I don't know. I mean,
like, you realize every single episode of Seinfeld is exactly the same, right?
Yeah, but I can't watch Seinfeld. Like, I can't watch sitcoms in general. The only one I watch is Goldberg's, and that's just because like I think Mike
on that show. Not the bad people, not all the people who got kicked off the show for like the weird sex stuff, but people who are still on the show.
Speaking of Larry David, like I don't know how that's gonna happen with. But did you see the Larry David crypto commercial?
Yeah, I can't escape it. I can't escape crypto.com no matter how hard I try. Everywhere I go, Matt Damon's calling me a pussy.
Yeah, with that weird way he stands, where like his arms are like slightly bent and like slightly forward from his chest, and no one else seems to realize like he's been standing weird since 1998.
What's really funny is that there's now an Expedia commercial with Ewan McGregor that looks exactly like the
a crypto commercial. I know.
And I keep thinking he's gonna like, oh no, Obi-Wan's not gonna tell me to buy crypto now, is he? And he's like, go travel and see the world. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Thank God. With Expedia.com. Ah, fuck. So much goodwill gone for the wrong company. No, that's true. That came up when I was watching a video, and I was like, I know this isn't a crypto commercial, but well, there's also that there's that weird Matthew McConaughey commercial where he's like, I've been to space before, and look at all this great stuff going down on the on planet Earth, and I'm just like,
what?
But Matthew McConaughey, you don't bathe. Like,
is it
for
a
some
Lincoln
reason
commercial?
No, it's not. It's let's see. I always spell his name wrong. You think?
I know. The Matthew McConaughey Lincoln commercials were like next level stupid. They're like the purest distillation of like the worst parts of McConaughey's persona.
They were
Where it's just
so
like him
funny.
driving around in a car and he's just like, life is like a car.
People
It goes
wonder why I'm
on.
hot. It's like supposed to be.
That's the whole commercial.
It's like they saw New Detective. They saw True Detective, and they're like, that's what's gonna sell it. Matthew McConaughey doing monologues. I used to drive Lincolns before they asked me to be a sponsor of Lincoln. I like the way they feel. The tanned leather reminds me of growing up in Texas. When the sun rises, the sun, power, heat, movement, things, words. I was like, oh god, it's the New Frontier Salesforce Super Bowl ad where
You know
Matthew
what's amazing
McConaughey
though is
dresses
those
up.
commercials were directed by Nicholas Winding Refn.
Were they?
Yeah.
No, really?
Yeah.
What? This is why, like, if you become somewhat big as a director, and they're just like, yeah, you can do it. Now I want to watch all of those commercials. Lincoln,
those
sponsor
awful
us. They needed to be shot by Cary Fukunaga, so that we could get that real True Detective vibe.
You made Adam Markiplier.
Well, you know, Cary also controls his own camera. Like I say his name like we're on a first name basis.
Except when it's controlled by Adam Markiplier.
They just bring back the whole True Detective team. They have Nick Pizzolatto write new lines for it that are subsequently just thrown out.
Because it's like he writes like 5 minutes worth of dialogue for a 30-minute TV, 30-second TV spot.
Matthew McConaughey just looks at it. You've heard that story with Robert Shaw where they brought in John Milius on Jaws to rewrite the speech that Robert Shaw gives. And so, like, John Milius wrote this, like, really long, like, 10-minute speech, and Robert Shaw just cut lines until he got it down to about 5 minutes. That's the commercial in a nutshell.
I'm not surprised that a John Milius speech would be just, like, bloated and over the top. Because he's like a bloated, over-the-top person. Like, that's his energy that he, like, brings to the room.
What was it? There was, like, one story. Have you ever seen the documentary Milius?
No, I mean, I've seen trailers for it.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
There's this one part where they're telling this story and like John Milius just like pulls out like they're not getting the tension or the vibe they want, and John Milius just pulls out a gun and puts it on a table, and then everyone's like all tense, and then like, yeah, and then we shot the scene and it was great. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
I was like,
well, I mean, there's
weird actor shit. It's crazy.
I mean, nothing will ever get more like insane than the whole like Werner Herzog threatening to murder Klaus Kinski unless he finished Agira, The Wrath of God.
Oh, Werner Herzog, who ate his own boot.
Yep. Apparently, it was either that or Fitzcarraldo, where a lot of the natives they were working with on the movie, they really didn't like Klaus Kinski, so they offered to kill him. They're like, hey, Werner, we don't like this guy, and he's like, we think he might be like an evil spirit or something. Do you want us to kill him? And Werner's like, no, but I'll keep that in my back pocket.
If he were making documentaries at the time, that would be his new documentary. Dude, you got to do the accent. You got to do the German. Like these natives, they want to kill my star. This will win me all of the awards. A documentary.
The natives want to kill my lead actor. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. Sometimes I regret not allowing them to. Yeah, I saw some interview with him where he was like,
Man.
where like someone was asking, like, you pulled a gun on Klaus Kinski, right? And he's like, no. I just said I would kill him. Like, I never had a gun on my person. and he's like, but a lot of the natives on the film did want to kill him. And he was like, really? How'd you manage that? Well, he's like, well, I just told them not to, but I still have mixed feelings about that. It's
God.
like decades later, he's still like, yeah, sometimes I wonder if my life would have been easier if I just killed him.
Like, it couldn't have been that great, like, working with Klaus Kinski. Because, like, all I hear are horror stories.
Oh, yeah. Well, according to Herzog, he was saying that, he brought Kinski out into the jungle, and he would basically just everyone would just sort of have to suffer through his tantrums, because at the end of the day, like, he could threaten to kill Klaus Kinski, and Kinski couldn't do anything about it because everyone hated him, and the closest police station was like 100 miles away by boat. So he was like, it's like, if you don't finish this movie, I will kill you, and you can run as fast as you want, but
I'm gonna get you.
by the time you get around the bend of the river, you'll have 8 arrows in you.
It's literally just like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and like Klaus Kinski like fumbles a take, and Werner Herzog as Belloc leans over and he's like, oh, you didn't do that take very well. And he's like, you son of a, and they all point their arrows at him. Like, choose your words carefully, Dr. Kinski. I was gonna, from all of the, like, if we ever make a movie, Gabe, like if we ever get to the point where like studios are giving us money, like, we should never shoot in the jungle. Let's just not shoot in the jungle. Like, all of the stories I've heard have been horror stories about shooting in the jungle. Don't do it. You would do that.
Oh, I would totally do it. I was like, let's go to like the worst place possible and shoot a movie. And it will all be like, worse people for it, but we'll have a great work of art to show for our troubles.
No.
Hey, at least Klaus Kinski's dead, so I can't hire him to be our star.
I know, but like, I'm telling you, listen to the DGA conversation with James Gray. Is he the director of Lost City of Z?
Yeah.
Like, that movie, incredible. That shooting experience sounds like a nightmare.
Oh yeah, no, like white people making movies in jungles is never good. It never ends well. Like, there's not a single instance where like everyone hasn't just suffered unreasonably to get the movie done.
I like how you're like white people, like, but Beasts of No Nation was also like really rough. I don't know if that technically counts as the jungle.
Is half of a white person. But
the part that got him hired for James Bond is
people who
white.
are from those countries where they have jungles will make movies in the jungle, and it's not I don't think it's nearly as bad.
Yeah, but we don't live in the jungle, Gabe.
Well, exactly. We're northerners going down to the jungle to make a movie, and like, we make this great film, but then there's also like a great behind the scenes story that's a document of like American hubris or something. But like, if you're Colombian or whatever, your jungle's like right there, so you can just shoot a movie and be like, yeah, like I live here, so I know what it's like, and yeah, it's not easy, but I know what I'm doing. Unlike some people from certain hemispheres.
Pans over to Charlie Hunnam, who starts a voiceover. I knew he was talking about me, but I didn't have the heart to. Oh my God.
Finished.